Val here, just a short guide for joystick and mouse key bindings. It's a follow-up to my previous video talking about control methods. I'm using a joystick in my left hand and mouse in the right hand. Joystick is a Thrustmaster T16000M. The mouse is a Logitech G502 Proteus Spectrum. I think the joystick is a good buy overall if you're looking for a left-hand friendly joystick for under $100. The mouse, I don't necessarily endorse. I think there probably are better options. I like the button layout of the mouse, but it's got wobbly buttons which seem to resonate every time you click. It's not a big deal, but it annoyed me, so I put some tape over there. Alright, so the joystick has 3 analog axes, X, Y, and twist. The mouse has 2. On the joystick I have all my strafe controls, left, right on X axis, up, down on Y axis, and forward and reverse on the twist. This may seem like not the most intuitive choice, but there are a couple of good reasons for it. Primarily, having strafe control on the stick means you have direct analog control over your course indicator on screen. Any other option will leave you without this direct control. It makes moving through asteroid fields and around obstacles much easier. Also, from a combat perspective, your joystick movements relate in all directions perpendicular to your opponent's aim, which potentially makes dodging with strafe easier. You're also able to perform circular movements while maintaining orientation, which is a great way to make yourself harder to hit. Performing those kinds of circular movements on a keyboard is a real nightmare. Forward and reverse on the twist axis feels similar to the way a motorbike throttle works. I found controlling my distance during combat became much easier after making this change. I highly recommend having analog control for forward and reverse. So with movement controls on the joystick and aim on the mouse, that covers navigation, but it leaves out roll. Roll is definitely important to have, but of the primary 6 axes of control, I think it's the least important, or at least the least urgent. So I have roll bound to the left and right hat switch. Due to the nature of the hat, it's easy to accidentally tip the up and down direction while using it, so I've left those up and down buttons unbound for now. Space brake is really helpful to have. I have that there on button 3. I'm using it less and less now though, since I've become a little bit more aware of my drift in decoupled mode. I'm able to stop myself with strafe a lot of the time, but to come to a complete stop, you still need space brake, so there it is, button 3. Now's a good time to introduce my primary modifier, which is the forward thumb button on the mouse. I have that bound to the left alt, so while holding down the modifier, I have landing mode on the space brake key, and on the 4-way hat, I have my IFCS toggles and cycle view there on the up hat. On the trigger and button 4, I've bound boost and afterburner. Boost on the trigger allows me to use it in conjunction with everything else, since it's often used during combat. If I had it the other way around, then I'd lose the control of those other thumb buttons while boosting. So I think this is a good way to have it. With the modifier, I have quantum mode, toggle, and activate on those 2 buttons as well, so that covers the engine modes. Over to the mouse, I have my weapon controls on the left and right click, guns on left, missiles on right click. This is a somewhat new change for me that may need to change depending on what ship I'm using, but ideally this is the way I want to do it. I don't want to have to manage multiple weapon groups simply because I ought to be able to get all guns on target at once. That's the most efficient way to do it, and I don't see why I'd want to be doing anything different. Anything else seems to me like silly business. I mean, I wish the game would either provide a legitimate reason to use multiple weapon groups, or just allow us to use whatever we like on every ship. Let us customize it how we want. So one weapon group ought to be all you need. Right now there's some issues with changing weapon groups in some ships, so if that's the case, you can go into the key bindings and bind left click individually to all the weapon groups you need. Next up is targeting, which is covered by these 2 extra buttons on the index finger. Since I'm not likely to be firing while changing targets simultaneously, I found this is the best use of those buttons. Reticle focus on the forward button, nearest hostile on the rear. With my modifier, I have cycle friendly and cycle hostile there as well. On the standard mouse 4 and 5 buttons, I have my countermeasures, which are the default controls. I haven't changed those at all. Fire counter and cycle counter. It annoys me, I can't just have chaff and flare on each button. Presumably there's going to be more countermeasures, but even so, I'd still want a single key for each one. I don't want to be cycling, and then fire when I get to the one I want. I want to be able to just bang fire what I need at the time. So that really covers everything I need at this stage. I have eject bound to one of the buttons at the base of the joystick. Besides that, everything else is on the keyboard and I don't use it during flight. There are some controls there that I expect I will need in the future for the persistent universe, such as shield management, power management, maybe push to talk, some scanning and additional targeting controls. So I've left 3 keys with the scroll wheel in good locations spare. At least one of those I expect will be an additional modifier, so I have plenty of room to cover it all. Anyway, that's what I'm using at the moment. I'm finding it works really well. Depending on what mouse you have, this will hopefully be adaptable for anyone else who likes this scheme. I think a standard mouse with just the base buttons will struggle with a joystick and mouse setup. So I'd say you'll need at least a gaming mouse with some extra buttons to make it work comfortably. Thanks for watching and for the great response to my previous video guide as well on control methods. I appreciate it all. Cheers.